and so where does that love of when did you decide to study ecology? When did that hit the radar for you?
It's an interesting question, one I often get asked, and there's no definitive answer. It's always been there. Right. And some of my earliest memories are to do with wildlife. And I mean, from the age of about, well, maybe not 3, I can't remember that far back, but 4, certainly. I remember we had big old storage heaters in the house in Llanwddyn, Lake Vyrnwy, where I lived. And they were on overnight because it was cheaper. They were off in the day. I remember sitting on those for 2 reasons. First of all, it warmed up my backside. And secondly, I could look out at the bird feeder, and I remember clearly seeing a very strange looking chaffinch come into the garden one winter when we had snow. And it was my first ever brambling. And I clearly remember seeing the last red squirrel in the garden. And after that, it was just greys, So it's always been there. It was nurtured by mum and dad. They were both teachers. They were excellent. They never tried to bend me off or veer me off the path of going to work in conservation. I always knew from very, very early age exactly what I wanted to do. And if I couldn't play rugby for Wales, it was going to be conservation. And I definitely wasn't good enough to play rugby for Wales. And so they always encouraged that. But the one overriding figure in my life early on was Tide, my grandfather. We used to go up and stay there fairly often. And he was an electrician by trade, but he'd been a poacher. And bear in mind, he was born in 1888 or 1889. So he was around, he was a young lad at the time when most of the area where he lived up in North Wales was still owned by the big landowners, and you weren't allowed onto the estates, big walls there. And he used to creep on, he used to poach fish, he used to poach duck and rabbit and pheasant just to bring food home to put on the table, because food was hard to come by. They weren't a wealthy family, not by a long mile. And he passed on a lot of that knowledge to me, not just how to identify stuff, but to look at the behavior, to think about what they were likely to do next, how to find birds' nests, how to tickle fish, how to catch fish with my hand, what I could and couldn't eat, the plants that I could eat, digging for pig nuts or eating wood sorrel leaves, all of that kind of thing he passed on to me. And he loved having a young lad, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years of age, hanging on his every word and just thirsty for that knowledge that he had.
Yes. So you didn't realize at that time you were learning the subtle arts of observation, field work, and becoming a nature detective, really?
Not really. No, I just really, really enjoyed it. And I loved going out with Tide. He taught me how to fish as well. We used to go fishing as well. Yeah. So it was just that thirst for knowledge and something that I was interested in. And what's interesting is that when I went up to high school, I really didn't like it at all. Really didn't enjoy high school at all. I'm not a formal education type individual. Some people are good at it. It's geared towards certain individuals, but not to others. I just wanted to be outside. I wanted to learn outside. And a lot of my mates were the same, albeit they were farmers. They didn't want to be in school because they wanted to be at home working on the farm or working on the machinery or whatever it was, So it's difficult with education. I know we've got one education system throughout Wales, throughout most of England, Scotland as well. And it's not a one size fits all. It's never going to fit everyone. It's impossible. Of course it is. And it didn't really work for me.